G'day guys, welcome to the latest episode of Beyond the Tape podcast, a podcast where we kind of explore people doing rad things in the Australian mountain bike industry. Media, riders, creators, people building bikes, doing whatever. For this episode, we are talking with someone outside of Australia as part of the Beyond Borders kind of series that we are doing. But before we get on to who we're talking to and what we're talking about, let me just do some quick sponsor plugs. Of course, we've got Canyon supporting this podcast. As usual, they are the number one supporter of this podcast. They've come on a huge way in 2021. Just got back from riding my Spectral. Still got the 27.5 model. Really liking that kind of classic geometry, super poppy, fun, playful bike. I have purposely neglected this bike for the last couple of months. Have done zero maintenance on it, been very brutal on it, and it still keeps going. Other than the pedals and the stem, everything else on it is still completely stock from when I got it. Oh, and those sick Magura brakes. But it just keeps going. I've touched nothing. It is epic. It's probably one of the most solid bikes I've ever owned. In saying that I've neglected it though, I do need to get the suspension serviced. So I will be sending them up to NSDynamics, Australia's premium suspension servicing company. They also sell products like DVO, Cane Creek, Olan's, and a bunch of aftermarket parts like Force Sprung. So yeah, hit them up if you want your suspension to feel better than new. The DD wheels on the Spectral are pretty okay, but I'd much rather get some Nova wheels with some Factor hubs. Of course, I'm going to hit up the guys at 2Up Bike Co. Those guys are the distributors for Factor hubs, Nova wheels, DeMonte lubes, and then of course the Shimano saddles. They are killing it at the moment. Really love their product, and congratulations to the winner of our pedal giveaway. So hopefully you like those pedals. I'm loving them. Those with my Etnies have been the perfect amount of grip and flex. Been loving them. We've also got Dirt Surf mud guards. Those guys have been keeping the dust out of my seals. Don't forget to use Beyond the Tape 15 over there to get 15% off. They do custom guards and stuff like that as well. Actually got a sick one right up there, which they did for me. When using a mud guard, of course, is to keep your thick clothes clean. So Huckley World have been a big sponsor for the last few years. Loving their kit, still love their tech tees. Still got the OG one of the first ones they'd ever made, and it is still kicking on strongly. So I've been loving their kit. Use Beyond the Tape 10 over there to get some sweet discount on that stuff as well. If you do get dirty, make sure that you use some Crush products to keep your bike clean. Those guys are killing it. Absolutely love what they're doing. If it is wet and muddy and you want to protect your hands as well, be sure to hit up Fist. They've got a Beyond the Tape 15% discount code up there as well, which I believe is just Beyond the Tape. All will be in the show notes underneath this episode. I think I've plugged enough holes. I believe that's all my sponsors. Sorry if I missed anyone. Don't think I ever have, but I always feel like I do. The podcast this time is on podcasting. We've got Chris Hall from the Downtime podcast on this episode. He is the OG mountain bike podcaster, I believe one of the first, if not the first. He's also one of the only people that does this full time in our industry. He's a bit of an inspiration to anyone that gets into it. He's interviewed everyone from Manar, Aaron Gwynn, some up-and-comer named Loic Bruni. He's done a bunch of rad interviews with some of the best riders in the world, and he's also done some really, really cool industry stuff as well. We talk about how he got into podcasting, how he left a job as an engineer at McLaren, just his whole life story, and just a bit about podcasting. So I hope you enjoy it. It's a really good episode, a bit long, an hour and a half-ish, really good quality, hopefully. And yeah, thanks so much to everyone that's been listening. As usual, grab a beer, grab a water, grab a wine, grab whatever makes you happy, and have a good listen.
podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. It's weird being on the other side of this thing.
I know it's weird. As I said just before we started, like it's weird having the voice answer you back as well.
Makes it novel, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. For those that don't know Downtime and what you kind of do, did you want to just give us a brief introduction about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, I guess so. So I run the Downtime podcast, which is a gravity-focused mountain bike podcast, I guess is the way I describe it. So mostly like downhill enduro focus, but a little bit of kind of the free ride side of things as well. I've been running that since February 2017. I started on February the 14th, a little Valentine's Day present to the mountain bike world. And yeah, been going ever since then. So like a couple of hundred episodes deep now. Had some, like a massive wide range of guests on, from kind of athletes to mechanics, coaches, brands, some of the journalists, the photographers, the videographers, like all sorts of people that just make this sport awesome, really. Yeah, I guess that's a summary of it.
I mean, like you kind of went right into the niche aspect of a niche sport. Like, were you always going to go with the gravity focused stuff?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I mean, that's what I'm interested in. And I think like if you're ever going to do a podcast, you need to be pretty interested in it, because it's a reasonable amount of work, and having like that knowledge there already and that enjoyment for it just makes sense. So yeah, I've had people along the way ask me if I'm going to feature some of the cross country riders, and like I'm kind of tempted because I have got more into watching some of the cross country stuff more recently than I had done for years. But I don't know, I just don't know those people so well. I'd have to do loads more research, and I think it's just nice, like people know roughly what to expect when they tune into the podcast. They know that it's focused on this particular area of the sport. They know what they're getting. So yeah, I don't know. We might one day talk to some of the cross country lot, or different areas of mountain biking. But for me, it was always going to be that kind of niche part of the niche, like you say, because that's just where I sit and what I'm interested in the most, I suppose. Yeah.
I guess now 2017, I think XC was still pretty flat and like speed orientated, whereas now it's getting a bit more gravity orientated. Really, I guess I've seen a lot more people in that gravity scene start to watch XC more.
Yeah, it's got, I think, like short track. I don't know when they started short track, but that's kind of quite interesting because it gives you like a really short kind of window into it. You don't have to sit for 2 hours and watch a race. You can kind of just give it a little try and see whether you're into it or not. So that's been quite good for it, I think. And then, yeah, I think you're right. Like the courses maybe are getting a little bit more like gnarly on the gravity side of things. And there's just some really interesting riders kind of coming through in both the men's and the women's. So yeah, that like it's really cool seeing Evie Richards from the UK like working her way up in the women's side, and there's some really tight, exciting racing in that now. And then the men's, you've got like Matthew Van der Poel coming in and giving Nino a bit of a run for his money, and then like more recently another UK guy, Tom Pidcock, who seems to be able to do anything on any bike, like coming across, and he won by a huge margin at the first kind of big XC race this year. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but yeah, TBC whether we feature any of that lot on the podcast, but I'll definitely be tuning into some of it for sure.
It's all mountain biking at the end of the day. It's all good to watch.
Yeah, it's bikes, isn't it? At the end of the day, that's what we love. So yeah, it's cool.
How do you kind of get into bikes? Like, if we wind back all the way, like, how did you kind of get into it? That's
a long way. So I was a fairly bored young kid, I guess. Like, I saw these people doing stuff around me, and I just didn't really know what I wanted to do with my time. I remember like really being bored and just like trying different hobbies, and like nothing really clicked. And then like, I guess my best friend at school, because that was the best friend days back then, was in Scouts in the UK, which was a fairly big thing back then. I guess I don't know if it still is so big these days. So I joined Scouts, gave me a little bit of something to do one evening a week. So that was kind of cool. And then we went on we did a bike race in the local woods effectively. So this was like early 90s. I was 11. And me and another guy, Jamie, just like absolutely buzzed off it. We were on, wrecker bikes. Like I was on a Rally Mustang, I think. He was on some Peugeot thing. The bikes weren't really up to it, but they were mountain bikes in inverted commas, but they weren't really mountain bikes. And we just buzzed off being off-road on our bikes, like hooning around the woods in all the leaves and over the roots. And we were like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, should we just do this after school, like tomorrow? So we just kept meeting up and riding bikes in the woods, and then I guess discovered that it was an actual thing. So Mountain Biking UK was the big magazine back then in the UK, and started subscribing to that and getting into that side of things. And I persuaded our dads to take us racing. The first race we did, Jamie's parents, I think, entered us and somehow entered us into the fun category, which sounded about right. But that was an adult category in the UK then, and we were like 13 or something. And then we borrowed a roof rack for his dad's car, which we couldn't fit. It took us ages to fit, so we were super late setting off. And I think we got there about 2 minutes before the race started, like threw some kit on, legged it to the start, and we were like surrounded by all these adults, like wondering what's going on. And then had to ride, like, I think it was 2 laps of this pretty horrific, like chalky, wet, sticky course. But we absolutely loved it. We buzzed off it, and that was it really. Like there was only really XC racing back then, so that was what we did, and it just went from there really.
What kind of era was that at that time?
Early 90s, I guess. So mountain biking was kind of starting to take hold, I guess, globally. It was definitely growing in the UK. MBUK was a big drive behind a lot of that. It was a fair scene. Like there was quite a lot of racing going on, quite a lot of different series that you could enter. There was always something like relatively local. So it was definitely a good time to be getting into it. I think it was through that like rapid growth phase. It was a good time.
You've always seemed to have like good local scenes over there. Like it's never really seemed to be, I don't know what the national scene is, but it looks like you've got good small local scenes and local races. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's changed a bit. It's been up and down a bit over the years. Series come and go, and different areas thrive at different times. But it can always be better, but there are some really good local race series. I don't think they necessarily cover the whole of the country at the minute. Like there's probably some areas where you'd have to travel quite a way to get to a decent race, but maybe that's based on terrain and stuff as well. But there is still a lot going on, and it's nice actually. Like it's just sort of started to open up again. So there are some small races going on. I know there was like a trial downhill race this weekend just gone with Uplift and stuff to see how that works with all the COVID shenanigans. So it's nice. It's really nice to see racing kind of getting going, even if it's at the local level and then hopefully national level, and then fingers crossed at a world level.
How far is like traveling a fair distance for you? Like that's always interesting to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, going to ride, like I'd say just anything up to like an hour is no issue. You don't even think about it. Anything more than that's is a drive you're starting to consider. But like, for us, probably a long way is like, I drove 3 or 4 hours. Whereas for you guys, you'll probably drive 3 or 4 hours for dinner and then back again, right?
Yeah, well, we're not that bad, but if we were to travel to another state for a race, it's a good 8 to 9 hour trek to our next one way and 12 hours the other way. Like it's crazy. Yeah, well, you could cover the whole of the UK in 12 hours as long as the traffic wasn't too bad. So it's a bit of a different scale, I guess. But were you always aimed on racing after that? Did that take your main focus, or were you still just riding for fun? And
I guess so. Like I said, it was just cross country when I started, so there wasn't a downhill side of things, and then that kind of started to exist. Like you'd go to a race and there'd be a cross country race, an uphill race, a downhill race, trials event, and like you kind of do all the events on one bike, and that was the weekend kind of thing. And then the downhill side, I guess, kind of grew, and that was what we were attracted to. I guess it's what we enjoyed. We liked the buzz of it, and I guess it was cool, and that's what we wanted to be. And that's the area of the sport that we kind of gravitated towards. A bit of a cheesy use of that word, but yeah. And then as kind of racing was getting going and the downhill side of things was growing, I went off to university. So I was away from kind of my like regular rider mates, I suppose, and didn't have a huge amount of money because, you know, university takes up a lot of that, takes up a bit of time as well. And I didn't have a full suspension bike. Like I just had, I think by then I had maybe had front suspension, but I didn't really have the bike for it. So yeah, I didn't do a lot of racing. I didn't even do a huge amount of riding when I was at university. I did a fair bit of drinking. And
takes
putting
a
on weight.
backseat, eh?
Yeah. So we did used to ride, but just, not loads. So yeah, I sort of missed a big chunk of the racing then. And I've never really like massively got back to it. I've not been one of these people that needs to race and like goes to all the races and does full series and stuff like that. Like I'll do a few races a year, just because I enjoy it, and it's nice to get between the tape with your mates and see how you'll get on and see how it shapes up, and to push yourself a little bit, and to have something to focus on, like for training and keeping fit. But yeah, I've never been like the sort of person that races for the sake of racing. Like I just enjoy riding bikes, and racing's a nice add-on to it. I mean, I love watching it. I love going to races, probably more than I like actually racing them, but I've got better over the years. I don't put so much pressure on myself at a race anymore, and I just go and try and relax into it a bit more and enjoy it. So yeah, it's nice. And I've missed it. Like every year we do like a little, well, it's not little anymore, but there's an enduro in the UK called Boltby Bash, which we used to run like way back in the 90s as an event, and they kind of brought it back about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's growing pretty rapidly into quite a big event. And me and a lot of my mates go and do that, and that's always good. But it didn't happen last year because of COVID, and it was a shame. It was we missed it, but it'll be back. I think it's in July this year, so it'd be good to get back on it. Yeah.
But you were kind of coming up and started riding, and you would have seen like the true heyday of, or the first wave of English downhillers as well, right? Like you would have had McCoy and Warner, Petey and stuff would have started coming up around then. Yeah. Were they kind of like your idols, or was it more of just the bike itself was enough for you, like just to ride?
No, definitely like massive hero worship for those guys back then. It's there's a poster behind me of Jason McCroy, signed by Jason at one of the bike shows, cool. Which is a massive treasure of mine. And finally got it up on the wall in here. So yeah, like he was a massive hero. Like he was just this incredibly stylish guy. Like the way he rode a bike was amazing to watch, like so skilled. And then, you know, going to the US and really kind of performing at the races and giving kind of UK downhill, I suppose, like a bit of a lift and a bit of a platform. And I think that paved the way for, you know, a lot of the riders that have come since. But then, PE and Warner and all of those guys, it was an incredible scene, like so much talent back then, and kind of pretty leery as well. You know, there was a lot of partying, and it was they were having a lot of fun and doing really well at the races at the same time. So it's kind of hard not to get wrapped up in that, because it's like everything you'd want. There's a great story behind it, plus the results. And it makes it hard to not just be kind of a massive fan of those guys. And I grew up in a town called Reading, and Rob Warner's family lived kind of just outside Reading. So you'd like occasionally you'd go to the local nightclub and you'd see like Warner in there, and like maybe Petey be staying with him. We'd saw Petey a couple of times in the nightclub and stuff. So yeah, it was pretty weird. Like those guys were so close, but like so far, if that makes sense. Like, we didn't know them; they weren't our friends, but you'd like see them in the club or whatever, and be like, "Whoa, it's Warner and Petey over there." So yeah, it was pretty wild. It was great time, and I think those boys all laid a foundation for a really strong UK scene, which is still going today, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And that attitude and that vibe that you get from most UK riders are still that style. I mean, they're a little bit more professional, but they'll kind of take the piss out of each other as well. So it's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's still on the whole, there's still a pretty laid back vibe to the kind of UK race scene, even at the very top level, which is really nice. Like, you go to a World Cup and everyone's pretty friendly and pretty chilled and welcoming, and yeah, it's really nice. I think that extends across mountain biking generally. It's probably not just the UK guys, but
yeah, it's true. We tend to weed out dickheads pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I can safely say I haven't come across any. I don't think. I think everyone that I've been involved with since I started the podcast has been like super helpful, really nice. So yeah, that's a massive positive.
And you mentioned you were at uni. What were you kind of studying and doing there?
Studied mechanical engineering.
Okay.
Not necessarily because that's what I desperately wanted to do, really. I just, I guess there's a theme here that I often don't know what I want to do with myself. So while I was like, in the same way that I didn't know what hobby I wanted to do, I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career or what I wanted to study. And I'd set up for my work experience to go and work in the local bike shop called Berkshire Cycles, because that seemed like an exciting thing as a young mountain biker, and my school weren't too stoked with that, so they set up for me to go to like do a week in the engineering department at Reading University, which I wasn't that excited about, but I did, and it was really cool. Like, there was race cars and things like that in the workshop, and we wrote a CNC program to make a bottle opener. That we went with some of the students on a day trip to a chocolate bar factory and got given loads of chocolate, and it was
cool.
It was like, actually, it was a really interesting week, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll go and do mechanical engineering then, with no real plan. I just went and did it. So yeah, 4 years Nottingham University doing that, which is where I met like a lot of the people that I still ride with today, and some people that are now in the industry as well that have kind of helped me along the way a little bit with the podcast and stuff as well. So yeah, happy times, really good times. But yeah, engineering is the short answer to that question.
Because at the same time, I guess when you're at uni and with Warner and everyone else coming up, you've got brands like Hope and Orange and stuff, and your UK like mountain bike component scene was pretty big at that time as well, right? So yeah,
definitely. There was a lot of kind of UK stuff going on, and there always has been. There's still a really strong industry in the UK now, but yeah, I was riding and I was into it, but I guess I didn't really ever have an eye on working in the bike industry or doing something in the bike industry back then. Like I as a kid, I worked as a Saturday lad in the bike shop, and through university holidays I worked in the bike shop as well to kind of just keep myself in bits and a little bit of cash. But yeah, I guess I never really saw, I don't know why, but I never really saw myself working in the bike industry. I sort of was tempted into motorsport and the car side of things, I guess. That probably excited me quite a lot, and I could see the application of my degree into that field. So yeah, I think at that age I was probably hoping to end up in the motorsport kind of side of things, which never quite happened. Sort of did, but not really.
What did you end up kind of doing for work after that? Did you go straight into it, or?
No, so I broke my leg a week before I started university, and I broke it again about nearly a week after I left. So I was I've been looking for motorsport jobs. I've been contacting people in Formula One, and they all wanted like work experience. They're like, what work experience have you got? And I was like, well, I just worked in a bike shop because that's what I need. Like, I wanted cheap bike bits and I needed a bit of cash. So I didn't realize that I needed work experience in the automotive world or in motorsport in order to be able to get a job in motorsport. So I'd kind of screwed that up, and the Formula One teams weren't really interested. So I ended up working in a warehouse that sells bike bits and bobs. So like picking and packing deliveries and unpacking, throwing bales of tires around and all that sort of stuff. A couple of days a week and a couple of days a week in a bike shop that a friend's dad owned. So I was doing that for a while, and then I was like, quite fancy doing a season. So there was a company back then called Alpactive, who, well, I guess like the first sort of mountain bike holiday company that I was ever aware of, and they were based out in Leger. So I went out and worked for them for a summer, just driving basically. So it was like the cushiest job ever, really. We had to drive to the airport on a Saturday a few times, pick people up, and it was cool because you could get them super excited and tell them about all the trails, and then you take them back at the end of their week and they were like absolutely buzzing. And then during the week we'd have to do a little bit of moving stuff around, maybe pick people up or go and drag someone off the hill if they'd had an accident and couldn't ride back. And but other than that, we were just riding our bikes all day, every day. Like you'd be on call occasionally, which just meant you had to have a mobile phone on you, but you could still go riding. It was incredible, like best job ever. Paid nothing, but who cares? It was mint. And then I was going to sign up and do a winter season with them. It's still in Leger. And I got a phone call from an automotive engineering consultancy that I'd interviewed for months and months and months ago and not got in that year. Hence I'd gone away and done a season. And they were like, there's a job for you if you want it. So I had this decision between, do I go and do this winter season or do I take this job? And jobs in the automotive world had seemed kind of hard to come by. So I just felt like I couldn't really pass that up. I went and worked for a company called Ricardo, who don't make seats, but they're like an automotive consultancy that do all kinds of stuff across the breadth of the industry, really. So I worked there for a few years, worked at Ford for a few years. Came back to Ricardo for a few more years. Well, in the middle of that, I did do a winter season in Chamonix in the end, but then came back, ended up doing some stuff for McLaren on their road car project when they were getting back into that. And then met my now wife, came up north, got a job in a turbocharger business, looking after their advanced engineering projects. And so I had like 18 years that covers of varying different things in the automotive world. So a lot of random stuff, mostly noise and vibration focused. So I was either making cars sound good or making them quiet, one of the two, for a lot of it.
Yeah, right. But there's some pretty big names. Like you can't just drop your work from McLaren and like there's some crazy times. Like
McLaren was literally not far off my dream job for like me, aged 15 sort of thing, to be in that incredible building in Woking, surrounded by the history and all the cars, and like Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button were driving from at that point, so you'd occasionally see those guys kicking around, and working on a brand new supercar. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also like a pretty incredible experience and an amazing thing to be part of. So definitely I shouldn't knock it. It was cool. And it's probably the closest I got to what I dreamt of doing when I was younger. But that was 18 years of engineering, basically.
What kind of, like, those jobs seem pretty damn cool, like to most people, whether you, like, I'm not a massive like Formula One guy, I'm not into those Euro cars too much, but if you are, that's a pretty epic job. Why'd you kind of get out of it? Like, what was the catalyst for kind of getting out of that whole business?
Well, the McLaren thing, I mean, that finished. That was a project to get the car launched, and we did that, and we moved on. So I was then at Ricardo, kind of just doing stuff that wasn't super exciting. It was okay, but it wasn't that exciting. And that's when I met Kerry. But the day, like, was it the day we met? I think it was. We were both in redundancy pools at work.
Okay.
And waiting to find out whether we were going to get made redundant or not. I didn't get made redundant at that point, and Kerry did. So she ended up moving up to Leeds, which is like, I don't know, 150 miles away from Brighton, which is where we were both living then. And we'd only like seen each other a couple of times, so we didn't really know whether it would pan out, what would happen. But there was a few, I guess, like random things where we were in the same place in the country. Like I went riding up in North Wales and her parents lived 10 minutes away. So we saw each other then, and she had some mates in London. I was up in London, and anyway, that kept happening. And so we ended up doing a long distance Leeds to Brighton thing for a while, which was cool, but like super hard work, 'cause it's 4 hours each way on the train, and it's like, it's a pain. You got to get past London to get there. And so we did that for like 2 years, and then I started looking for work up north, just to be near her, really. So that took me to doing this turbocharger stuff, which was not really like, I was getting further away from the stuff that I was excited about, like further away from the car, like the product, and further away from anything like the interesting, like supercars and stuff like that. So the work was less interesting. And then like engineering have this, it probably happens in a lot of places, but if you're good at your job, they promote you to the point where you're not doing that job anymore. You're just looking at spreadsheets and making presentations. So I got to that point and was just not really enjoying it. You know, staring out the window, wishing that I was doing something else. And yeah, I got into listening to podcasts, and I was like, oh, no one's really doing this sort of thing for mountain biking in the area that I wanted to go down. Like there was a few mountain bike podcasts kicking around, but they weren't really talking to the people I wanted to talk to or asking the questions I wanted to ask. So yeah, that was when I started thinking about that, I guess. And that was the gradual journey out of engineering and into what I'm doing these days.
What year was that you were kind of starting to listen? And
it would have been late 2015 into 2016. Okay. And I guess the idea for like the podcast probably started like talking about it to mates, like maybe August, September 2016. And then I pretty much decided I wasn't going to do it because there was a few new mountain bike podcasts that had started in that time frame. And I think maybe Vital had started theirs. And I was like, oh, I think maybe this kind of gap has been closed. And then, I was at a New Year's Eve party at the end of 2016 with some mates who included Si, who runs Kotick Bikes in the UK, and John Firth, who was looking after the marketing for O'Neill at that point in time. So he was looking after the relationship with Greg Minnar as well. So Si was like, you know, I fully support you, whatever you need, like you got to do this. And John said, you should do this. I'll get you Greg Minnar as your first guest. And I was like, well, you can't really turn that down, can you? At that point. So, I mean, Greg wasn't the first guest in the end, which is probably a good thing, because you got to find your feet a little bit. But
definitely,
So I started working on it like January the 1st and went live on February the 14th. So it was about 6 weeks of working out how the hell to do it and how to build a website and all of that side of stuff, and buying some bits and pieces to get going on the cheap, and went from there.
It's pretty like to get started is not that expensive, but it takes a lot of time to work out how to do things because it's a very convoluted process at the start.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is. And there was a huge amount of stuff that I had no idea about. Like I'd never done anything vaguely website based. I knew what an RSS feed was, but beyond that, no idea how to sort that out. I had some level of experience with kind of microphones and sound from work, like noise and vibration stuff with cars and engines, but pretty different. But the internet's a pretty amazing thing. Like if you've got the time and you're willing to put the effort in, you can work out how to do pretty much anything, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. Like you just go on YouTube and watch it all these days and you can find out a lot. Yeah,
definitely.
So who was your first guest again? I can't remember.
It was Chris Kilmurray from Point One Athletic.
Yeah,
so
cool.
Yeah, guests, well, I don't know how you found this, but like certainly early days, guests were really hard to come by. And in fact, I nearly gave up. So I'd emailed or tried to Instagram message or Facebook message or whatever, loads of people, and just didn't get anything back, or people didn't know what a podcast was. And I guess they didn't know what was in it for them. Like it wasn't a thing back then. That's changed. Like it's got a lot easier. But yeah, I nearly gave up. But yeah, Chris Kilmurray was super willing to be involved, which was awesome. So he was guest number 1. And then I'd randomly found an email from Martin Whiteley, and I'd messaged him and said, like, this is what I'm doing. What's the chance of getting in touch with some of your riders? And he just got back and was like, oh, that sounds good. Who do you want?
Yeah.
Which was incredible.
He's
so
like that.
Yeah, he's amazing. So I was like, well, I don't know. You know these people. Like, who do you think would be good? So he put me in touch with Nico Mullally and Justin Leov.
Oh, cool.
So they were like guests 2 and 3, I think. Bex Barahona was pretty early doors. She was keen. And yeah, it sort of just got going from there, really. And I think the timing was kind of good because I had this first batch of guests that were kind of up for it. And maybe they'd put me in touch with 1 or 2 other people along the way, and that sort of helped grow it. And then it was getting pretty challenging and like starting to look like it might dry up, but it was Fort William World Cup coming up. So I just took a few days off work, went up to the World Cup, and literally just spent the whole week walking around the pits, trying to talk to as many people as I could, like explain what I'm doing, try and get contact numbers or emails or whatever, and just try and build a bit of a list of people that I could get in touch with and keep the podcast going, basically keep guests coming in. So yeah, having Fort William like 6 hours away was a bit of a lifesaver, I think, because it would have been, back then anyway, it would have been really hard to get in touch with enough people to keep it going. So yeah, thanks to Fort William World Cup for that one, and a lot of miles covered walking around that pits all weekend, but it worked out.
It's like as good as Instagram is and Facebook and email, like nothing beats getting out to an event and meeting people and chatting with them about things. Like you can make so much more connections and get so much more done in 2 days than what you would in like 2 months on Instagram. Oh,
for sure. Like, and I think I knew that, but like the last year or so has massively reinforced that as well. Like I'm really glad that I'm in a business where I can still keep working through COVID and I can do it from the back bedroom of my house. But I massively miss seeing people, sitting down with them, having a chat, like that side of things. I didn't realize how important that was to me really until it was gone. Like I recorded my first in-person interview this year, last week, and it was so nice just sitting in the same place with someone, having a chat, which is how this is supposed to be. You know, technology helps, and this is cool. The fact that you're in Australia and I'm in the UK and we can do this is incredible. But it would be so much nicer if we were sat like in the same place with a couple of beers and just able to kind of sit back and chat. So yeah, I think doing stuff in person is ace, and that's where I'd like to, as much as possible, that's what I'd like to do with this. It's never going to be 100% that way because I want to be able to speak to people from all over the place, and the technology is good. You know, you can make it work pretty well. But yeah, as much as possible, I'd like to do more of it in person.
And I guess being in that smaller part of the world, it's a lot easier as well. I guess like if you want to interview someone in Britain, it's quite easy.
Yeah, definitely. Europe is not a million miles away. Like, I'm quite lucky in that we've got a lot of World Cups within sort of, relatively speaking, a day's travel away. So yeah, that's pretty useful. Whereas for you guys, it's a big old trek, isn't it? If you want to get up to where the vast majority of stuff is kind of happening, at least at a World Cup level anyway.
It's impossible. Like it's literally impossible at the moment. I was going to try and get to World Champs, and I think it's 4 weeks total of quarantine.
Wow.
And at least like each way travels, 48 hours. So when you take into that, like for 4 days, 5 days of going to a race, it's just not worth it.
It's not. It's crazy. Yeah. I was hoping to get to World Champs because it's like it's back to back with Lenzerheide, and Eurobike kind of sits in the middle, and they're all within about 4 or 5 hours of each other driving. So I thought, yeah, it'd be an ace trip. Like I'll only be away from home for like 2 weeks, but I can get a World Champs, a World Cup, and Eurobike ticked off. But even from here, I don't know. We'll see how things progress, but it doesn't make it easy at the moment, travel. So
No.
I don't know. We'll see. Maybe once everyone's kind of got vaccinations done and all that stuff, it will get easier. But yeah, it's not looking like a trip that's going to happen at the minute, which is a shame because I love being at the races, and it is a great place to get really good content and to catch up with people and to feel a part of it. But maybe, for me, maybe it's another year without that, which is a shame, but it will be back. So
I mean, we've got local events as well, which is sick. So
exactly, yeah.
The other thing with Australians traveling is we can go to Europe, but we can't guarantee that we're allowed back in. So it's just a huge gamble. Just get stuck over there.
Well, bring your bike. There's some pretty good trails. There's worse places to get stuck.
It's too cold. Too cold, man. Can't do
If
it.
it's sol in the summer, you should be all right.
Yeah, and it's like our winter.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I think I mentioned this to you when I messaged you, but you're the only full-time mountain bike podcaster I can think of at the moment, because everyone else I know of is either professional athlete, which doesn't count, and then either working, like I'm working full-time job as well, and everyone else is kind of working. So how did you kind of get to that point where you managed to do it full-time?
That's a good question. I guess a bit of luck and a lot of hard work, I suppose. So my old job, I was earning reasonably well. I was able to save money, and put money aside. So I saved up about enough to live for a year, pay my half of the bills and mortgage and everything and food and stuff. And then literally minimal on top of that, enough to live. Even a takeaway coffee was an extravagance that wasn't really going to happen. So put away about 12 months worth of money in the bank. So I knew I had 12 months from when I left work to where I didn't need to earn anything. I could get through the year, which is lucky because I didn't really earn anything. So I started really focusing on how can I make this pay enough for me to live off. I'm not greedy. I don't expect to be a podcast millionaire. I'm not, and I'm never going to be, but I just need enough to get by. Did that year, and towards the end of that year, it was getting pretty stressful because it wasn't looking like anyone was interested in supporting the podcast financially. They'd be willing to send you a bit of kit. That's not necessarily a problem, which is awesome. And I'm a massive product geek, so I love having the opportunity to try different stuff and test products and ride different things. So that's really cool. But you can't eat bike parts.
No,
and you can't sleep under bike parts. I mean, maybe you could, but you got to make some money somewhere. So anyway, eventually, I think it was end of October, got an email from 661, and they were like, "We want to support a few episodes of the podcast." And cool. It was a massive sigh of relief. This is awesome, great. We're on the right track. Someone's interested, and I guess it's just kind of spiraled from there, really. I think once other brands see brands getting involved, they start thinking, well, maybe we should be involved. And the vast majority of the brands that I've worked with have come back. So you kind of build this roster of people every year who want to come and support and want to do more with me, which is really cool. So it shows it's working for them. And I think other brands are like, well, those guys keep coming back, so there must be something in this podcast thing. So maybe we'll go and support for a bit. And the names kind of get bigger as well. So initially, maybe it was some of the kind of small to middle-sized brands. And then eventually we got to the point where kind of YT and Canyon and people like that have been involved. And that's been super good, but it's not without like a lot of emails, a lot of chasing.
Yeah.
Like I can't even tell you how many miles I walked at Eurobike in whatever year it was. The first year I went, because no one knew who I was. I didn't know what I was doing. I just had to literally try and talk to as many people as I can, explain what I was doing, explain what a podcast was in a lot of instances, because it was still kind of fairly new in the mountain bike world, and explain why they should support what I was doing and get involved. But all it takes is to find the right person at the right company that understand it, are excited about it, want to be involved. And then that's awesome. As soon as you build those relationships, that's phenomenal. And it's been great. Like the support that I've had from so many awesome brands along the way has been fantastic. And so I'd say like the first year of me doing it full time, I funded. The second year of me doing it full time, just about scraped through. Yeah. And then like in the last 12 months or so, it's been reasonably good, like enough to live off and not be too stressed about money coming in, which is great. Oh, and I should say as well, like the listeners helped out. There was a real gap in early 2019, I think, for a couple of months where I didn't have any support again. And I set up a little kind of donate page on the web store, and loads of listeners supported, which is incredible. Like I don't like asking people for money, but they helped out when I needed it, and that filled a gap for a couple of months and helped me get through that period. So yeah, it's a combination of support from some awesome listeners and some great people and great brands along the way that have made it happen. And I'm super glad. And I mean, you say full time, but like I work 4 days a week, so I spend a day a week with my daughter, which is amazing. And I just kind of fit work in around everything else that goes on in life, which is super nice. But it does, it makes life easier. It means scheduling interviews is a bit easier. I'm not trying to do it in the evening after work or super early in the morning, and you can travel to go meet people. And it, if it takes 4 hours to get there and 4 hours to get back, that's not the end of the world. Whereas that would have been a whole day off work in the past and a day's lost earnings and all that sort of stuff. So like it frees me up to do more, which is super cool. So yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm in a great position, I think.
Were you approaching like brands at the start, or were they kind of approaching you to come on board the podcast? And
so at the very start, there was never any thought about this making any money. Like that wasn't a thing. Like I just wanted to do it. I wanted to be more involved in the mountain bike world. I wanted to ask these questions that I thought maybe weren't getting asked, or I wanted to speak to people that I hadn't heard from. And it was just, I was doing it for me more than anything, I guess. Yeah. So initially, no, there was none of that. And then it was very much me approaching brands. I would say for the first year and a half, even 2 years of me trying to turn this into something that would enable me to do it full time, because podcasting wasn't such a big thing, certainly wasn't a big thing in the mountain bike world. So it was me pushing rather than brands pulling, I think. And that's changed. Like I still contact people, I still send people stuff, I still get in touch with people and try and push that side of things. But I get more brands coming to me now and asking to be part of it, or how they can be part of it, which is super nice. And I'm quite selective, I guess, about who I work with. Like I have a lot of, I think, people assume that the podcast is free, but in my mind, it's not. Like I'm creating content for the listeners, and the listeners in exchange are giving me their time and their attention. And time is like the most precious commodity we have. So that to me is really important, and I have a huge amount of respect for that. So I want to make sure that any brands that get involved are relevant, interesting, good, making great stuff, doing good things. So yeah, there are people that have been in touch that I've said no to, because I don't think it's a good fit, or don't necessarily think it's a great product, or whatever it happens to be. But again, on the whole, I've been really lucky. Like the brands that come my way 9 times out of 10 are awesome. So yeah, that's been pretty cool.
Yeah, you do definitely have to kind of manage like who's coming on board. Like, you don't want some random underwear company like, or some weird kind of, you get some weird ones come through the door sometimes, like mattresses and
Yeah, I think I've said this in the past, but like I could have, if I wanted to have adverts for mattresses and website companies and all of that kind of stuff, like I wouldn't have needed to work anywhere near as hard, and I would probably be making more money. But it just doesn't feel right. Like it's I don't like listening to podcasts that have these kind of adverts that I'm like, well, that's not relevant. I'm not interested in that. Like I want to try and bring in cool brands, people that are doing good stuff, good products, and help spread the word about that, but also help, like a lot of people have said, oh, I bought this after listening to the podcast. I'd never heard of it before, but it's ace. And that's cool. That's really cool. If I can connect my listeners with something that they love, that brings them a ton of value, then the listener's happy, the brand's happy, I'm earning some money, which enables me to keep this thing going. Like it's win-win, isn't it? So that's kind of what I'm aiming for, rather than going down the line of like digitally inserted adverts and random stuff like that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Like people are doing that, and that's fine. But that's not the way that I've tried to run this. And so far, so good. Like it's working. So that's cool.
Did you ever find it that brands are reaching out to connect with other brands? Did you ever have that kind of happen and find that a little bit weird? You become like a consultant or a connection?
Yeah, a little bit. I've put a few people in touch over time. Yeah, I have no problem with that. Sometimes I have people get in touch like, oh, we'd really like to sponsor such and such. Like any chance you could put us in touch with whoever it might be, whichever athlete. So there's been a little bit of that, which is fine by me. As long I always check with people before I put them in touch, like whether they're okay with that. But yeah, it is kind of weird. But I guess you do quickly build up quite a wide contact list, don't you, doing what we're doing? So
the phone. I guess
it makes sense. Yeah,
phone book expands real quick.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like you go from I don't know about you, but I'm a massive super fan of the sport, and you go from reading about people in the magazines, and next minute their number and their name is in your phone book, and it's like, oh,
man, it is very, very weird. Yeah, I remember I was at Leger World Cup it must have been 2019, I think. I just arrived, and I was like walking through the pits to get to the media room, and I think Loic Bruni said hello, Greg Minnaar said hello, Eddie Masters said hello, and then I walked into the media room and Cathro was there, and he's like, oh, I've been listening to your voice the whole way here. And I was just like, this is the weirdest thing ever. Like I never thought in my wildest dreams I would ever be like a part of this scene in that way. And it's so nice to feel like like part of it, and like I'm adding something positive to it, hopefully. So that's been super cool.
Yeah, it's definitely like one of the best experiences for sure. Better than getting paid or having anything else is just walking through those pits and have people say hi. Yeah. That whole like, I know your voice. That's kind of creepy. And it's like, okay.
Well, you're doing this thing on video a lot more now, right? So more people know what you look like. No one really knows what I look like. So I'm a bit more, I guess, low key at stuff, which I kind of like. Yeah. But when people do recognize your voice, I love it. Like, it's so nice. People are always really kind, and they're like, oh, I love what you're doing. I'm really enjoying listening. Like, thank you. And that's just mad. I never expected that. It's really nice.
I mean, I'm 6'3" and 120 kilo and a big dude, so I tend to stand out anyway, so I don't mind being visible.
I'm a short ass. I blend in. I disappear.
Oh, it's the best. I wish I could. Who's been your, I guess, like the hardest interview, and what do you kind of do to get around those hard interviews? Because they definitely exist.
That's a really good question. Hard interview. I think, and there's different types of hard, isn't there? Right? There's people that just don't they don't really open up, or they don't, they'll give you a one-word answer or not really get into it. And I guess you just need to try and make them feel comfortable, try and help them open up, like just kind of keep, not digging, sounds horrible, but like ask, well, why was that? Or how do you feel about that? Kind of keep trying to expand that. And sometimes that doesn't happen. And then you've got maybe some of the athletes that are more experienced, that have maybe been interviewed thousands of times over tens of years. And they can sometimes be a little bit on script maybe. So you'll recognize an answer from an interview somewhere else, or these days from another podcast or whatever it happens to be. I think there's some inevitability to some of that, but I guess just trying to bring fresh questions and going down different avenues that haven't been explored with them before is a good way of getting people off that script a little bit. So I think there's hard in that they don't open up, and then there's hard in that they crack on, but you've heard it all before because it's like almost an inbuilt script. So yeah, I guess those are the two different types of interview that I would call hard. I'd never ever sat there thinking, oh, this is hard. Do you know what I mean? Like it's always been enjoyable and like a fun thing to do. But yeah, there's definitely I remember the first interview I did with Katie Winton. I think I asked one question and then like 20 minutes later she stopped talking. I was like, this is brilliant. It was so good because it was super interesting. She was so open and honest from the get-go. I was just like, well, I don't even need to be here,
Yeah.
And it's great when you get guests like that just open up and get cracking. That's fantastic. So yeah, there's flip sides of it. There's definitely easier ones and harder ones, but on the whole, they're all enjoyable.
Yeah, 100%. Both enjoyable in their own way.
Yeah. And everyone's different, right? Some people are naturally really chatty and other people are less so. And I think it's our job is to make them feel comfortable enough to open up. But also I think to not write off just because you've had a guest and maybe they've been quite short in their answers. You just need to get to know them better, and you need to get them back, and you need to do it again. Like have another chat in a year's time, because you'll know each other better. Maybe you see them at an event and you make the effort to spend a bit of time with them or whatever. So yeah, there's all of that kind of stuff, I guess, to try and make sure the interview is as good as it can be.
Do you have, Dean Lucas put it really well when I was in a shuttle bus with him at Nationals, but he's obviously got his own podcaster. He's a pro podcaster that part-time downhill racer now. People complain to him about like how he talks so much and it's always the same thing, but he's like, I've only got one story. I don't have multiple lives going on here. What I can't tell you, I definitely can't tell you. Like, like there's certain things that aren't allowed to, like, and then you go on and you interview more and more pros. I find it harder to interview those guys because they've been heard so much. Do you ever find that? Like, you can't really get that uniqueness out of some people?
Yeah, and that's getting harder the more mountain bike podcasts there are.
Yeah.
When I started, like it was pretty open space. Like you could create something and generally there wasn't too much overlap, and that's massively changed. So there's tons of mountain bike podcasts now, which is great. Like it's cool that the space is opening up and there's loads of people doing it and everyone's doing it a bit differently and bringing a different take on it, which is really cool. But it definitely makes my job harder. So like if there's an interview out there with someone, I will generally have listened to it before I've planned my episode. And and I will always try and find fresh ground, because otherwise, why would you listen to it? So I guess, I don't know, it's tricky. I've been asking myself this question a lot, like, should I just put it out there anyway and assume that people are going to listen, or should I be making a really conscious effort to try and make sure that this content is as fresh as it can be? And I guess I'm sort of somewhere between the two. So I don't want to massively change my style and approach to try and keep the episode 100% fresh, because people know what my style and approach is, and maybe that's part of the reason that they listen. But I do always want to try and get something you've not heard before. Because that's the unique piece. And like you said, it's getting harder. And there's like it's not just that there's more mountain bike podcasts, it's that there's this ever growing catalog of stuff building. You know, there was like, when I started, there was maybe, let's say, 1,000 podcast episodes out there about mountain biking. Like, that's probably 50,000 now. I don't know, but like, there's just so much stuff. But you know, it's the same in print. Like, every year, it's not in print, sorry, the same in written word, right? There's the top 5 shoes and the best way to keep your bike safe in your home, and they rewrite these things every year, and you know, it's hard for that to be fresh. So I don't know, like, it's tricky. The worst thing is when you record with someone and then like maybe it's a couple of weeks till you're going to put it out, and then 2 days before you're going to put it out, another podcast puts out an episode with that guest, and you're just like, oh no, like I thought I had something unique and fresh here. And like, I'm sure we've all been there. You know, there was a point last season where there was like 3 Geordie Cortez episodes in a week from different podcasts. And I'm like, I love Geordie. I'm probably not going to listen to all 3 of these. And I feel really sorry for people that have like been really excited about their episode for Geordie, and then the day before another one's come out. So it's definitely getting harder to stay unique and fresh. But I'm going to keep trying, I guess.
I remember I actually messaged Geordie, and I'm like, man, you look like you're drinking a lot and pretty bored. Do you want to come on a podcast? And he's like, because I've messaged him shit before about stuff, but he's like, man, I've already done 3 this week. And I'm like, oh, cool, you can have that. And then just left it at that, because he just got hounded at the start of last year. I think it was like March, April. That first lockdown, I think, because everyone was suddenly like, well, what do I do now? Like, everyone was sat at home. Everyone had time. I'm here, can you hear me? Yeah, there we go. That's all good. Cool. It's been slowly getting worse. That's all right. No worries. Yeah, it was that first lockdown, I think. Everyone was sat at home. No one really knew what to do with themselves. And so, there were more podcasts by then anyway, and more started. But it was really easy to get guests. You could literally pick and choose. So I guess through that period, I sort of tried to steer away from maybe the more, like the bigger names or the more expected guests, and try and find some more like off-piste people or people that I didn't think anyone else was going to be interviewing at that point in time. But then there's stuff like you want to kind of be topical as well. So like Matt Walker obviously won the overall. That was kind of a surprise to a lot of people. Like, came pretty late. So it makes sense for me to want to chat to Matt Walker. But then there's 2 or 3 podcasts with him the week after. So I haven't done it yet. Same with Reese, like Reese won Worlds, incredible, like amazing thing. I would kill to sit down with Reese and have a chat about that. But 3 or 4 other people have done it. And like, I don't want to sit in that crowded space if I don't need to. So I will definitely chat to Reese at some point. I hope I will, but I'm going to give it some space. So I don't know. It's part of it is a little bit frustrating, but I love the fact that there's so many people doing it now. There's so much good content out there to choose from, and it just means that Mountain Bike Podcast grows and grows, and I think that's a cool thing. And now people know what it is. Like, it makes it so much easier for the established crew, I guess. Yeah, I think it makes it easier for everyone. Like, I think those of us that have been doing it for a bit longer have sort of paved the way a little bit to some extent and kind of made it a thing, I suppose. And then podcasting in general was just risen anyway, like massively. And then lockdown gave that
a good boost, I think. So there's two things going together, just mean it's a good thing to get into. But it's hard work, isn't it? You know the score. It's I don't know how many of these people will like keep it up. Certainly when life gets more normal again and we're not kind of restricted in what we can and can't do so much.
It is definitely hard work. Like the listeners hear an hour or an hour and a half or possibly 2 hours, depending. But it's at least 24 hours that goes into every episode, I reckon.
Yeah, I think it varies for sure, but it depends on the subject, it depends on the guest, it depends how much stuff's already out there with them. But yeah, definitely, like I can easily lose more than a day on research if I've got like 4 hour and a half long episodes already out there to listen to with them, interviews to read, you know, and then trying to find the space in between all of that stuff. Like, yeah, there's a lot to it. Then you've got to record it, schedule it, record it, clean it up, put it out there, get it on the website. You do the video as well, which must be another big chunk of work. So yeah, play for that.
It's a lot more work than I was expecting, but hey, gonna do it. It's fun.
Yeah, fair play.
But it's always, getting guests organized. Like my two best guests, we do like a little three person one every now and then. And like you message them, are you keen for the podcast night? Can we still go ahead? And one of them's at a gig, and the other one's accidentally got drunk while cleaning the house. And you're just like, God damn it. Guess we're not happening now.
Yeah, it's definitely tricky. Like I don't like to record too far ahead most of the time because you don't know what's going to go on in the mountain bike world in that time. You want things to be kind of fresh, but then if a guest doesn't show up or needs to change something or can't make it or whatever, and it's like the episode you're going to put out in 2 days time and you haven't got something else lined up, it kind of leaves you a little bit tight. Because I don't know, do you publish to a fixed schedule? I can't remember.
I try to.
Okay.
I keep it within like a time frame, but I can't keep it exact.
No, it's hard, eh? Like,
yeah,
I try every Tuesday to get an episode out as a minimum, and it's achievable. And I think the only one I missed was when my daughter was born, but it's it's pretty full on sometimes. But yeah, I'm not complaining. I get to chat to people about bikes, which is like insanely good. So
yeah, it's sick. It's fun work. Hard work isn't always bad. It's good.
Yeah, but, definitely. Oh yeah, I'm happy to work hard at something that I love. That's no problem.
Yeah, scheduling it is definitely that. Yeah, every week I'm glad I don't do that. Definitely glad I don't do that.
Yeah.
You mentioned there that you had your daughter. Surely that made everything easier, right?
Yeah, man, definitely.
Yeah, you have way more time when you have a kid.
Kids make life easier. If you haven't got one, go do it. Yeah, it is definitely. Yeah, I'm kind of at the end of my group of mates. Like we're pretty much the last of our friends to have kids. Yeah, and so we've seen everyone go through it, and we feel like we knew what to expect, and you're still not ready. You're nowhere near ready, and this little bundle of craziness arrives in your life, and it's like the best thing ever. It's so much fun, but it's really hard and very time consuming. It's amazing how much time a small person can take up, for sure. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't be without her now. It's ace. And doing what I'm doing means I'm at home a lot of the time. I get to see her grow up. I get to spend like every weekend with her, every Friday with her. Like that's been amazing. So it's been fun so far. And she's already got 2 kind of bike things, not quite bikes yet really. But she's scooting about on stuff, and that's really cool. Are you there, mate?
Yeah, here now.
All
right. You were just saying something about the bikes? Like she's got 2 bikes.
Yeah, she's got a couple of little bikes. So she's got this thing called a scramble bug. She's like 4 wheels, little seat and some handlebars, but there's no steering and the wheels go in any direction. So she can just kind of scoot about on that. And then Tracy Mosley recommended a Pukey Lino. And you can't not listen to Tracy Mosley because she's the oracle on stuff.
Yeah.
So I managed to find a little secondhand one of those for cheap as well. So she's got this Pukidino thing, which again is 4 wheels, but it's got a little bit of steering, so they can start getting used to that. And then, hopefully in the not too distant future, she'll be balance bike ready. So that'll be pretty interesting.
I reckon every one of my mates' kids has had a balance bike before they were born.
See, I didn't go that crazy. She didn't have a bike until she was ready. And she doesn't have a balance bike yet, but she definitely will have soon. I know I've seen Cathro's kids on one already, and his kid's like maybe a month younger than ours. So yeah, she probably could, but just going to ease her into it and take her through the stages. Tracy Mosley said Pukilino, so that's what we're doing for now.
Yeah. Oh, well, she knows a thing or two. Heard she won a race once. Yeah.
Yeah, she's pretty handy. Her little boy's good on a bike as well, so.
Oh. That's what scares me about the future of riding, is all these pro riders' kids are just going to be pinners if they ride. Like, you already see it with Ethan Chandro.
Yeah, mate. Honestly, the next generation are incredible. Like, there's a girl here called Phoebe Gale who FMD Racing have picked up. They're helping out this year. I think she's 16, and she won this little Hamsterley kind of uplift trial race this weekend to just check out how uplift works with COVID and stuff in some incredible time, like so quick. And she's 16 and she's absolutely nailing it. Like, these kids coming through. So PE's kids look pretty handy from what I've seen, little videos of them, and they've obviously got trails at the house and stuff. And yeah, we're all in massive trouble. Like the sport just progresses at such a rate. The bikes are so much more capable. The riders are getting better. Yeah, kids are going to absolutely whoop our ass, but that's cool. It's good to see.
Yeah. Well, I think at Nationals this year for Australia, it was women's first was elite, then second, third, and fourth were juniors in times, and then it was the rest were elite. Like, it's insane. So good to see.
It doesn't surprise me. Yeah. I think it's even more marked in the women's side. That side of the sport seems to be accelerating. Like, the talent seems to be accelerating really fast, which is, it's awesome to see.
Yeah, it's growing hugely here at the moment in the women's side, which is amazing. So good to see.
Yeah, ours in the young women's side of the sport doesn't seem to be growing. Like, the people that are there's some really good riders, but there's not enough. But I think British Cycling are starting to focus more on helping develop some of the younger women coming through, and it's cool to see teams like FMD supporting young riders as well, like Phoebe. So yeah, we'll get there, I think, but plenty of work to be done.
Oh, for sure. There's always work to be done. We don't even have a proper national series, but that's a whole other thing for another day. Who has been your kind of when was your most starstruck guest? Like, who have you been more nervous about or starstruck by, if you have?
That's a good question. There's a few, and they're all kind of different. So I interviewed Greg Minnaar at Fort William in 2017, pretty early on. Yeah. And if you listen to that episode, you can hear how nervous I was, like rushing through stuff. And we were short of time anyway, like we didn't have a big window, but I was super nervous. Like, Greg's a super nice guy, but there's something about him that I don't know why is kind of a little bit intimidating. He's just such a composed person with such an amazing background, such a success that I just, definitely feel intimidated in his presence. I've interviewed him again since then, and it was a lot easier, a lot more relaxed. So that was cool. Who else? Aaron Gwynn, the first time we recorded together, was kind of wild because I was prepared, but we didn't really know when we were going to do it. Yeah, and I just sat down for dinner. I think it was like a Sunday evening, and I got a text from him, like, "Oh, hey, dude, I'm home now. Got some time. Do you want to record this podcast?" So I was like, said to my wife, "Do you mind if I just pop upstairs and interview Aaron Gwynn for a bit?" She's like, "Yeah, all right, off you go." So that was kind of weird, but we did it. A lot of what I've recorded remotely, certainly until recently, there was no camera. Yeah. So I find that easier. I think it's a little bit less intimidating, for sure. Not sitting and facing these heroes of ours. So that was good. But again, was super nice. And then one that I really felt the pressure for, but as soon as I got there, it evaporated, was Josh Bryceland.
Yeah.
Because I just felt like, certainly at that time anyway, like Josh, there was a lot more to Josh than I think a lot of the media was portraying at that point. And I just felt a massive responsibility to Josh and to the audience to make it a good interview, and to kind of get under his skin a little bit more maybe than some media had done. And we did it in person. We recorded it on Josh's boat that he was living on at the time.
Yep.
Like pretty much sat on this like couch on the floor with a cup of tea, and he's the nicest guy, like so chilled, but like a massive hero of mine. So I was really, really nervous for that. Put a lot of pressure on myself to make that a good one. But yeah, as soon as I got there and met Josh, felt very, very comfortable and at ease. So that was cool. Yeah. What about you? Have you been starstruck? What have you struggled with?
Martin Whiteley, number one.
Yeah, fair play. Martin's ace though, eh?
He's a really good dude, but
yeah,
as a super nerd, like the athletes sometimes come second to the industry people for me. Like it's weird. Yeah. So like his successful team and stuff meant more to me, and then he's obviously a big dude in the industry. Like he ran UCI mountain bike. Like you can't get much bigger than that.
For sure. Yeah.
So he was cool, but that went really well. We had dodgy internet. He was in the back of his truck, and it was kind of weird. I think he was my 5th guest.
Right.
Like, so that was cool, and he's helped me out with a bunch of work, and again, hooked me up with like Brooke McDonald and stuff, which was cool.
Nice. Yeah,
Brooke
he's
was
a really
super
good
nice.
dude.
Yeah. Brooke was super nice as well. I nearly cut my finger off like the day of our interview, so I had to go to hospital, and he was cool with rescheduling it and stuff, so that was pretty rad.
Nice. Yeah, Brooke's definitely someone I've wanted to have him on for a long, long time.
Yeah.
But it's one that ideally I would really like to do it face to face.
I wish I did too. Yeah.
Yeah, just and there there was so many podcasts kicking about with him over the last year or so. But yeah, one day hopefully we get to sit down and do it in person at a race. But yeah, he always comes across really well. Seems like a really nice guy.
And Matthew DePel as well.
Oh yeah.
He is blunt and straight to the point in the best way possible. But when you first deal with him, you're just like, oh, it's like getting told off by your principal or something, and being told off by him and him since. And yeah, he's definitely very blunt, and it's really cool. But I really like talking to him. Can't wait to have a beer with him when he's down here in Adelaide again.
Nice.
Hopefully we'll be back really soon. So
yeah. Ace. Yeah, you've had some awesome guests. Definitely like some really interesting industry people, like you say, with Matty and Martin Whiteley and people like that. Yeah, Martin, again, I've not had on the show yet, but it's someone I'd love to sit down and chat with. I've spent at Fort William a few years in a row, go and have a little coffee with him in the truck and a chat, and he's always really friendly, and he's got some interesting stories, shall we say.
Yeah. And I'd just love to spend an hour talking with Japel about just dumb shit he's seen on the tour. Like he was with Rennie, and he's with Connor, and I mean Will Rishbeth as well. So like he's got a lot of local ties to here as well, which is kind of weird. So
nice.
But yeah, he's got some crazy stories. So I wish I knew more before I went into it.
From the really wild days.
Yeah, like with Rennie in his prime.
Yeah, those boys got up to a fair bit, I think, back then. Rennie's someone I'd like to have on the show, actually.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Do you have one guy or one person that you really want to get on the show that you haven't had yet?
Yeah, there's a few, and I guess they're a bit predictable, really. They're all big names, but Nico Vulio, obviously, like we've sort of got close to recording something, but we haven't quite managed to make it work yet. Again, if I can do it in person, that would be ace. Just like they were, so far ahead on the technical side of things back in the day with what they were up to, and he's still at the cutting edge of the technology, which is amazing. Like such an athlete, so that would be cool. Petey, because it's Petey, but he still claims he doesn't know what a podcast is. Don't know if that's changed. But Yeah,
I think
and
he
then
just
Sam
got
Hill.
a smartphone.
And then Sam Hill, just because, again, I like he's a really interesting character that we don't get to see a huge amount of. I think like he's not a big one for interviews and stuff, or it hasn't been in the past. So yeah, I would love to sit down and have a chat with Sam at some point. Maybe if everything goes ahead this year, we've got a EWS in the Tweed Valley, which is only a few hours away from me. So if he's there and up for it, then that'd be cool. Like I met him at, again, Fort William 2017, I think.
Yeah, cool.
And I felt pretty starstruck by that. But he's, again, really nice guy. So yeah, that'd be cool. Have you got people on your list?
Rennie, for sure. Like Rennie and Kovarik together. And we all just get blind drunk. That's like the dream. But I'll probably die if I try and keep up with them. So, but no, I've met Rennie and he is an amazing human. But I think there's a lot of stuff. They did it on Inside Line, but there's a lot of stuff after writing that I think would be really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a guy here called Scott Sharples.
Yeah.
He used to race back in the day. Yeah. But I don't think since he stopped racing, I don't think we've had a top 10 elite male that hasn't been under his guidance.
Yeah. So when the summer that I did in Leger, he was looking after the Aussie junior team, I think.
Yeah.
And they were all staying in Boomerang Hotel, which was a famous party place / bike hotel out there back in the day. So yeah, Scott was around most of that season, I think. Yeah, proper legend of the sport.
Yeah, so him. And then we've got another local legend. We're actually mates, but I really want to interview him, Matt Holmes. He kind of started BMX media and mountain bike media in Australia, like just built scenes up like really well. Had a huge battle with cancer, like just a really cool dude. So
interesting.
Really want to have a chat. Again,
nice.
Has to be in person. So waiting for him to get back down here.
Yeah, ace.
Yeah, there's so many though, right? Like,
yeah, people have asked me. They're like, "Oh, you're going to run out of guests soon?" I'm like, "Nope." There's so many interesting people. Well, for me anyway, there's so many interesting people in this sport, and even at like time moves on, right? The sport moves on. So you might have had someone on before, but like it's cool to get them back. If you enjoyed chatting last time, then get them back and see what's been going on. So there's definitely like an increasing roster of people that I try and catch up with on a sort of semi-regular basis as well, I guess. So that's been a nice addition to it, because I think there's a bit of a different style to those. It's more of a bit less of a kind of formulaic interview to an extent, and a bit more open and relaxed depending on what's been going on. You know them better, so you have a bit more rapport, and that makes life easier. So yeah, I quite like the catch-up episodes have been something I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, for sure. I actually forgot to say with my favourites as well would have been like Mad Dog Boris.
Oh yeah,
actually having him on is next level.
Yeah,
and every time
I haven't got around to listening to your one with Boris yet. I listened to one with him a few years ago. It was like 3 hours or something. It was awesome. I was blown away.
It just every time you post something after interviewing him and Mad Dog Boris likes your photo, it's just like the weirdest. It still blows my mind. So
yeah, he's a good dude. He's got a lot of energy and a lot of passion for the sport.
Yeah, I know. It was like 1 o'clock on his time, and he's like, "Got any more questions?" I'm like, "Jeez, man, what are in those cigarettes?"
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Cool.
Might start wrapping things up a little bit here.
Yeah, man. Go for it.
Got 3 questions I like to ask at the end of every interview, like everyone in podcasting. Kind of stole that from you guys. What piece of advice would you give to people that are looking to kind of start up?
To start a podcast?
Starting a podcast, or I guess maybe in a really, really good job, but are kind of bored and want to do something else, but it's kind of risky. Because it seems like something you've done.
I'd say do it for starters. Like if you really want to do something, if you've got that much energy for it, you're going to do it well. So get on with it. I don't know. Taking the leap is a hard thing to do. So if you can like build confidence in this new project before you do anything drastic. Like, I wouldn't recommend anyone says, oh, I think it'd be cool to start a podcast, I'm going to go and hand my notice in and then crack on with that. Like, I don't recommend that. I don't think that's a good idea. But if you can do some stuff in your spare time, find out how much interest there is for whatever it is you want to set up, like, just build confidence in you and what you want to do before you leap. And then just don't expect it to be easy, and don't expect to make money, because like, do it because you want to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to build any business, to get anything off the ground is takes hard work and energy. So you got to love it. You got to want to do it, because it's probably going to be a while before it makes you any money. So if you're doing it for money, don't bother. That would be my advice, I think. Yeah. But yeah, definitely. There's nothing better than doing what you love and getting up every day and actually being up for getting stuck into work, rather than getting up and going, oh, that again. So yeah, it's worth the work for sure.
100%. Even if you're not getting paid millions.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like in the UK, but Australia, we're probably 1/1000th of the size of like a podcast in America, and those guys barely make any money. So,
it's
never going to happen.
Yeah, you're not going to get rich off it for sure. But if you want to, if you're passionate about something and you want to be able to have the opportunity to speak to the top people in that niche of things that you're interested in, then that's cool. Like, that's enough reward in itself, right?
Yeah, 100% every day of the week.
Yeah.
Have you had any regrets or wish you'd done something differently in the past?
In life or with the podcast?
Both.
I'm not a massive regrets kind of person. Part of me wishes I'd started this thing sooner, but I don't know whether I could have done, if that makes sense. Like, I think like, everything needs to come together at a time where that can work. I don't know that I could have done it any sooner. So I don't regret that. I would like to have been doing it for a bit longer, but still got plenty of years ahead, hopefully, if things continue to go well. So that's all good. And then, I don't know, I feel a little bit like I could have done more with my time at university, and maybe like got fit and had a proper crack at being all right on a bike, and maybe doing a bit more racing, rather than getting drunk and, hanging out. But I enjoyed it. It was good fun. I don't regret it. I don't know. I don't think I would really change anything, to be honest. Like, everything is a product that gets you to where you are, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Even the bad things fuel what you do now. So, no, I don't think so in the grand scheme. Like, that's a rubbish answer.
No, it's 100%. What I was kind of expecting tends to be what most people who are entrepreneurial or go down there and route kind of say. So, which I think is important for a lot of people to understand. Yeah, you've just got to get on with things, haven't you? Not everything goes well, but if you don't try, you never know. Yeah, exactly. And last question I like to ask, seems to be hardest for a lot of people, but if you are kind of lacking motivation or you need to get amped up for something, what music, or do you have any songs or anything that you listen to get kind of motivated?
I wouldn't say that I do. I don't think I use music for motivation, really. Probably use it more for like to relax, or to kind of to feel chilled. Like, I don't know. Yeah, that's a tricky question. The most played thing in my Spotify account is the first Fat Freddy's Drop album.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's called Based on a True Story. I might be remembering wrong, but I don't know. There's something about that album, like you driving to a ride or back from a ride, like sunny, warm, having that on just makes me feel so happy with everything. There's something about that album. So that has a mood for me. Yeah, I don't know. I listen to so much, or I used to listen to so much different stuff. I don't listen to as much music these days
Yeah, okay.
for some reason. I don't know why. Probably because I spend less time in a car, and if I do,
Yes.
I listen to podcasts more than I ever used to.
Mm.
But yeah, I just have a massive, wide-ranging taste in music. I guess like I used to do a little bit of DJing many years ago, and always just like to play a really kind of random mix of all sorts of stuff from like soul, funk, all the way up to like fairly filthy drum and bass and that side of things. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's anything that is like a go-to for me. But yeah, the most played thing is that Fat Freddy's Drop album. I just think it's incredible.
Yeah, cool.
Seen them live once, and it was a pretty special experience.
Yeah, I think they just kind of toured Australia or something. I just saw on Instagram a bunch of people were going to their gigs, but could be wrong.
Oh, if you ever get a chance, it's a nice place to be. It seems to like be a nice crowd, and they're just incredible live act.
Yeah, rad. I'll have to check them out next time if they're around.
Definitely, man. Yeah, well, they're your part of the world, so it should be a bit easier to get to a Fat Freddy's gig than it is over here these days.
Easy, mate. Well, yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a really big pleasure to have you on, and yeah, thanks for your help when I was setting up and for talking shit on Instagram every now and then. It's been fun.
Oh, no worries, man. No, it's nice. It's super. Yeah, thanks for having me. Like, it's pretty weird being on the other side of this, but yeah, nice to like. This is the most face to face we've ever met, right? I think it has pretty much been Instagram messages for the last few years, on and off. So yeah, fingers crossed that events come back and we can actually hang out and have a beer and have a proper chat at a race somewhere in the world at some point. That'd be real nice. But yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
It'd be epic. Yeah, big media party.
Let's do it.
Time.
Podcast to get together.
Yeah.
Should be a pretty big party these days.
It would be huge, yeah. Probably more athletes than there are media people these days, but easy, man. Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day, and I really appreciate it.
No worries. Cheers, mate.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
All right. How's that, man?
Good, mate. Good. Thank you so much. Sorry, I just got so many things to stop.